We talked about the markets being higher, up 236 on the Dow now. Of course, could change as quickly as one tweet. That's the way we've been reacting here for quite some time. And certainly what we saw on Friday was something else after the Jay Powell comments and President Trump comes out with his. Down we go. Deke Digital Chairman Dave Maney is with us now. So back we come, Dave, today. So what do you think is really going on? Gordon and I are going back and forth on it. My sense is that President Trump sensed that we were set up for a pretty big sell-off today, the way that things were opening up in Asia and the way that things were going in the futures market. And, you saw from his tone there that he knew he was speaking while markets were open, and he certainly maybe knew when he made the comments earlier that markets were set to open lower. What do you think's going on?
Well, I think you're right, Connell. I think you're fundamentally right, but I don't think it's good. Yeah. And because what it seems to be now is that you've got a guy who's fundamentally trying to manage the markets with his comments, that he's not kind of doing, just understanding that he's got an elliptical effect on the markets, but that he's actually sort of mouthing words that are actually designed to do something specific. You have that theory from the Nixon era about the madman theory of international relations, which is be unpredictable and make them think you're capable of anything. Right. I think that the president is becoming predictable. You can see, I'm not happy with how things are going, so I'm going to say some things that seem, sort of off the spool. And then as soon as it goes too far, I'm going to come back and say something else. And that pattern has happened so many times that it seems to me to be losing its effect.
Well, that seems logical, right? But then I would say, well, why are we up today? Why wouldn't investors just ignore if the president was predictable and perhaps, was losing some credibility, as it were, with investors or something like that? But no, we react tick by tick, comment, tweet by tweet. There are still reactions in markets. Will that always be the case? What do you think?
Yeah, so you're right on top of it, which is, no, it's not happening yet, but it's not like it hasn't lost its power yet, but it strikes me that it's losing its power. The stuff Friday on the companies are hereby ordered, that kind of stuff is that's a little bit beyond the pale. And when you do that for effect, which is what I increasingly think, and I think the markets are starting to think is what it's for, then it starts to lose its effect. So it'll just be interesting to see going forward if it becomes just a very weak sauce.
It just hasn't happened yet, because if it had, that down 300 that we saw last night would have continued as opposed to turning around. A quick thought, Dave, on the technology companies. There's this back and forth on the digital tax in France that was discussed at the news conference along with everything else. And I guess the main point from Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, they're going to work something out with the OECD, international body, and they'll come up with a new system. And then if France needs to refund American companies after that's worked out, and there's no timetable on when it will be, then we'll give the money back. What'd you make of all that and what it means for these companies?
It's an economic revolution. That's what I've written about all the time. The rules and the structures that existed to deal with an industrial era revolution don't work for this one. It's like saying, well, what's the law of the sea? Well, gosh, before Christopher Columbus or Magellan, we didn't need a law of the sea because nobody went to sea. But just like now, we're now dealing with this transnational, there are no borders thing, and companies and countries are still trying to work it in the old framework, and it doesn't work. So I think you're going to see the death throes of that part of the international order that'll go on for the next decade or more.
Right, and this whole OECD thing could take, well, who knows how long. So, but anyway, Dave, good to see you as always. Thanks for the analysis, Dave Maney.